Consequences is that the plane doesn't get off the tarmac and it's running through the fence. My name is Gary Mathieson, Staff Sergeant. I was a Navy Reserves 8 years and then crossed over to the Air Force for almost another 19 years. And I was stationed at March Air Force Base with the Air Force Reserves. Served from, 1992 to 2018-ish. In the Navy, I was a builder. And after the Navy, I crossed over to the Air Force, where I was a C-17 Loadmaster, combat camera, and also a 141 Loadmaster.
Wow.
So I had like 4 MOSs throughout my career.
Yeah, nice.
A lot of studying. I was born in Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana. My dad was flying B-52s at the time out of Barksdale. He was a Bombardier Navigator. Lived there a couple of years, moved to D.C., where he was assigned to the Pentagon. After D.C., we moved to Colorado. From Colorado, we spent, 4.5 years in Japan. When my dad was going to Vietnam, they shipped us to March Air Force Base, where we spent a year there while he was flying out of Thailand.
Wow.
And then when he came back from Vietnam, we went to Nebraska for 4 years. After Nebraska, Davis-Monthan for a couple of years, and then up to Beale Air Force Base for almost 5.5 years.
Wow.
So I moved around a lot.
Is your dad, is he what inspired you to join the military, or?
Well, I loved the fact that my dad wore a uniform. I loved and respected that uniform. Seeing the air shows as a kid, living around other military personnel. When we were up at Beale Air Force Base, we had U-2 pilots, living on our street, SR-71 pilots.
Wow.
Had a retired lieutenant colonel that flew, I think it was B-24s over Germany.
Oh, wow.
So just being around military people, I really liked it. About 8 months before I graduated from high school, my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and he was given about 8 months to live. And he passed away and was buried on my 18th birthday, and found out that we qualified for his GI Bill. And that GI Bill, was like $200 a month. Wasn't a whole lot, but it was a little. And I said, okay, I can afford to go to junior college. So I went to junior college for 2 years, and then transferred to Cal State Long Beach and finished up my other 2 years there. Finished up, I was working for the airlines. I got married. My wife was getting her teaching credential. She talked me into getting mine, so got my credential, and then the Gulf War hit. And it was my first year teaching. Just bought a house up in at Crestline, and I'm watching the war kick off, and I thought, hey, I think I need to go do something. So I went down and talked to some recruiters, talked to Air Force, talked to the Navy, and went Navy Reserves. I went in thinking I'd do 20 years, and then after 8, I'm thinking, no, I'm going to get out. And I was supposed to get out in December, and 9/11 hit. And 9/11 hit, I go, okay, there's going to be a stop loss. I'm not going anywhere. I didn't want to go anywhere. I wanted to stay because I knew we were going to be at war at some time, but I didn't want to stay in the Navy.
Right.
So I finished up my Navy career in December, and I talked to an Air Force recruiter, and I was able to start with the Air Force Reserves in January. So I went in, crossed over, and started going to load school for 141s. And that's the Loadmaster is responsible from behind the flight deck all the way back. The entire back end of the aircraft is your responsibility. You have to know the formulas, the restrictions of the aircraft, fuel consumption of the aircraft, all that.
Wow.
So pretty intense training for school. I think I did more studying in the military than I did my civilian job.
Yeah.
It's like, when we did air shows, and you had a woman with high heels on and with spikes. You'd have to have her take her shoes off because she may go through the floor with that.
Really?
Yeah, because the PSI that's on that little, heel could actually puncture a hole in the aircraft.
Oh, wow.
So, you had to know all the restrictions. And in the 141, it had different PSIs throughout the aircraft because it had different thicknesses of the floor. And then you have tanks. You put tanks on board. You put, vehicles with hard rubber wheels, with soft rubber wheels, and you had to know all the math calculations of that. Plus, you got to tie those things down.
Yeah.
So you have to know the calculations for all the G going forward, back, aft, all that. So, you got your tape measure out, you're measuring the angles and making sure that those are secured properly. And so it was a very interesting job. I loved it. And very challenging.
Yeah. What type of training did you have to go through to become a Loadmaster?
Well, with the Loadmaster, you had to go through the basic load school, and that was the calculation portion. And at that time, they wouldn't let us use calculators. And it's like, wait a minute, calculators have been around quite a long time now. And their response was, well, if it breaks, I go, I'll buy another $10 calculator. I'll have 3 in my flight bag. Yeah. They go, no. So we had to do everything by hand, and each problem would take about 45 minutes.
Wow.
And you had to have graph sheets just to keep all the numbers in line so that, you didn't drift over into another section. And you're multiplying, dividing, thousands with decimals and all that. And it was amazing how many people washed out because they could not do the math quick enough to qualify.
If you screw that up and load the plane wrong, what are the
consequences?
Yeah.
Consequences is that the plane doesn't get off the tarmac and it's running through the fence.
Oh.
And it's very important that the weight and balance of the aircraft is important. Plus the equipment that the pallets that are coming on and the vehicles that you're loading, that those were weighed correctly, and that the center, especially in a vehicle, you have to find the center of gravity for the middle, the CG. And you got to weigh it all. Well, we had an situation, I think it was Afghanistan, to where an Army unit weighed their Humvee, and they put the CG in. Well, after that, they threw all their bags in the back of the Humvee, and when they loaded it, Loadmaster assumed that was the center of gravity for the entire vehicle with the bags. Well, it wasn't. So that plane never got off the tarmac, went through the fence, and killed the Loadmaster because everything went forward.
Damn.
And do you recall that airplane that went down outside Afghanistan after it took off, that civilian aircraft?
I don't. This last Afghanistan during the pullout?
No, it was in the middle of the war there. So a civilian aircraft had a bunch of vehicles on board. They had landed in, I think it was Bagram. And they overnighted there, and then they took off the next day. Well, they didn't check their equipment to make sure everything was secured. And when it took off, the entire load shift, one of the vehicles broke loose, and all that weight went to the tail end of the aircraft. Oh. And there was somebody actually driving on the road, videoing it as it took off, and it just straight down.
Oh,
killed three people, the pilot.
Wow.
And I remember I flew over that 2 days later, and I'm up in the cockpit and I was taking pictures. It was just the tail left on it. So, we take our job pretty seriously, because if we don't do our job correctly, we're people die.
So when that happens, they go straight to the Loadmasters?
Well, the thing is, civilians don't have flying Loadmasters. Somebody will go on board, double check everything, but in the Air Force, we would always do a walk around, make sure everything's done correctly and stuff. So if the plane sat overnight, we would have to do a full-blown pre-flight. If it only sat 12 hours, within 12-hour period, we would not have to do a full-blown pre-flight. We'd do a quick check. Well, they didn't do a full check, and people lost their lives.
Wow, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So math calculations are obviously important. What other type of training did you have to go through?
Went over for C-17, had to learn the aircraft, everything about it. Like I said, the PSIs on the floor, the height of the aircraft, and how much weight we're bringing in, because if we're bringing something in heavy, we don't want the nose popping up. So we have to make sure it comes in correctly. We have to make sure that if a vehicle is going on board, it doesn't hit the top of the inside of the plane. So went through that school, and then got survival training. And I was 40 years old when I went through that. I was a butt kicker. And then POW training. And during POW training, I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing here? 40 years old. I can be home. I can be with the family, and I can be doing a lot of other things besides freezing my ass off and going through this this, POW training, which was pretty brutal. Got to Florida, Pensacola, and it was pretty damn cold. It's like, it wasn't summer weather.
Yeah.
It was November, and we started learning all about, if you parachute in the water, how do you react, how do you get your raft up, stuff like that. And they didn't parachute us in, but what they did is they had this boat that was designed to get parasails up, and they take you up quite a bit. They had a flag that was maybe 6 foot by 6 foot. They said, when you see this waving back and forth, unclip, and you float down into the water. It's like, oh, that's a big flag. Well, they send you so high up, you're going, is that flag going back and forth? Because you can barely see the boat. It was so damn small. And
Yeah.
I'm scared of heights.
Oh, man.
I'm scared of heights. I mean, you can put me on a roof, and I worked for my brother's roofing company, and I was scared to even go towards the edge. So I'm up there, and I'm going, God, and then you're afraid that you might unclip the wrong thing, that you unclip yourself out of the parachute.
Wow.
So, I unclipped, and I parachute right on down, got in the water, and I sat in my life raft for, about 6-7 hours, hoping there wasn't any sharks.
Really?
Yeah.
And so they're just teaching you how to survive in the water.
Yep. And they give you this little survival kit, and you try and do a little fishing without poking a hole in your raft and stuff like that.
Now, are you guys doing this as a team or?
No, we were all over the place.
Solo.
Yeah, solo. I mean, the closest person was maybe a mile away, and another mile. So you're there by yourself, basically.
Wow.
Yeah. And you go, I hope they don't forget about me out here.
Wow. So you're claustrophobic. They're putting you in little box, and then they're afraid of heights. They're making you there. Oh, man.
Yeah, but, I didn't tell them I was claustrophobic. I didn't tell them I was scared of heights because I wanted to fly. I was on my last training mission. I was in Florida, Tampa Bay, and it was Valentine's Day. And the aircraft commander came to dinner, and he goes, call your family. We're not going home. So what? Yeah, we got presidential activation. We're going to England. So we all got on phones, called home, said, happy Valentine's Day. We're heading to England. When are you going to be home? Don't know. So off to England, we went the next day.
Wow.
So we were at Mildenhall. And it was kind of neat being at Mildenhall, because when my dad was with the SR in the U2 program at Barksdale Air Force Base, he would TDY Okinawa and Mildenhall. So here I got to go where he used to work.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty neat. Here I am, in the footsteps.
Yeah, that's super cool.
So that was neat being there. And so we were just running missions down into the Middle East, putting special ops teams in, munitions, supplies.
This is for the invasion of Iraq, right?
For the invasion of Iraq. Yeah, because Saddam, wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing with the UN inspections.
Right.
So, we were there a couple months, and then I'm sitting there watching TV, CNN, and, they're saying that the U.S. has launched their attack. Tomahawk missiles were launched, and ground forces were going in. And we were next up. My phone rang in my room, said, hey, you're alerted. So, half hour, we'd have to be ready on the bus and off to the briefing room. And we went through our briefing and stuff, got to the plane, loaded, I think, 150 troops, and then flew all the way down to Kuwait City.
Oh, wow.
Dropped them off. We were ready to, we locked up, got our fuel, 150,000 pounds of fuel, ready to take off. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking out the windows, I see siren, the siren lights going, and ended up Kuwait City was being attacked from Iraq. They were sending Scud missiles. Yeah. So the aircraft commander, calls the tower, hey, we're ready to go. They go, you guys ain't going anywhere. We got Tomahawk crews and Scuds above, so put your chem gear on.
Yeah.
We sat on the tarmac for 2.5 hours, with 150,000 pounds of fuel, sitting on a big gas tank. I wonder if we were going to get hit.
Right.
And, we're looking outside and everything that's going on. And fortunately, we were okay, and we were able to launch. But over the Mediterranean, we had a hydraulic emergency landing. We had a hydraulic system failure.
Oh, really?
We did an emergency landing in Sicily. There about 8 hours, they repaired us, and then back to England we went and sat on, alert status.
Wow.
Until we were next ones up to go back down into Kuwait.
So you just go through a rotation?
Yeah, we had like A, B, and C, so different rotations. So, if you're in Bravo alert, Delta alert, stuff like that. So when when you're there, you couldn't go anywhere. You just sat in your room because they didn't have cell phones back then.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to be ready within 30 minutes. Once the aircraft commander called, hey, 30 minutes, you're packed or you're out the door. So you had to be ready. So
what was your mission flying into Iraq?
At the beginning of the war, we're just troops, munitions, supplies, stuff like that. And then as casualties started hitting, they redeployed us to Germany, Ramstein, where the big medical hospital facility is. And then we started flying Medevacs out of Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd fly down, pick up the critically wounded, and bring them on back. Or we picked up HRs and brought them back to Germany.
Yeah.
We just do that rotation. And then every now and then we'd be rotated back to the States. And if we went to Andrews, we took the critically wounded. If we went to Dover, we took human remains. And then, back to England we went. And there were times when, when we went to the East Coast, we were told, hey, you guys, we're going to fly you back to March. You got 2 weeks off. So, wow, great. So, you call family, hey, I'm coming home for, I've got 2 weeks leave. And, we take off. We're halfway across halfway across the states. And next thing you know, hey, guys, we've been diverted. So we're not going home. And then it happened so many times where my wife said, don't call.
Yeah.
Don't even let me know when you're coming. I wouldn't even call until I was physically in my car driving on the freeway back home.
Huh.
I call her up and say, hey, I'm home. How long for? They said 2 weeks. Okay. So I get home, wash my clothes, sleep in a nice bed, get to be with the family. And then I get a call second day in, hey, report back tomorrow. Because the pilots were staffed at 165%. So we had a ton of pilots because all the airlines were doing furloughs. So they all came to the reserves and, they were flying and there was a lot of pilots, but Loadmasters were only 65% manned. So we were constantly just being put on different crews and going.
Wow.
So that, was put a lot of pressure on the family.
Yeah. What was it like doing medevacs?
It was pretty darn difficult. To see these men and women that were hurt pretty bad.
Yeah.
I remember one guy, he must have had like 200 stitches just keeping his face on.
Oh.
And then, some of the ones being brought on the litters with body parts missing, legs missing, arms, things like that.
Oh, man.
So got to really hand it to the medical crew.
Yeah.
They were unbelievable, the service they gave to our troops. But, I'd help bring them on board, put them in, because once we landed in Iraq, we would convert the aircraft over to a medevac. So you'd have to change the entire configuration of the airplane, put all the litters up and stuff like that. So we were able to take, I think on the 141, about 21 litters, and then walking wounded.
How long does it take to convert that once you land?
You had to do it pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because the fact is we would land at night and then we'd take off before the sun came up because we were sitting targets.
Yeah.
And last thing we wanted was a big airplane sitting on the tarmac and something for them to shoot at. So everybody worked in unison. We worked very quickly and we'd be able to convert those things over quickly. And then they'd start bringing the wounded out. And, if you took off during daylight hours, you didn't want to, because when you took off with critically wounded, it was a slow takeoff. I mean, you couldn't do any maneuvers because some of them, the head injuries that these people had would have killed them.
Wow.
So that's why we always wanted to get off the deck before the sun came up.
Wow.
And then, flying into it, we do like what we call a corkscrew. You'd be about 8,000 feet up, and then it's just a corkscrew on down and land.
Wow.
I remember the first time I did that, I was on one of my training missions. We're out at flying to Vegas. And, I'm up in the cockpit looking down. I go, we're landing? And, Colonel goes, yeah, we're landing. I go, airport's way down there. I'm used to this.
Yeah.
He goes, well, watch this. And bam. It's like, damn, that was fun.
Yeah.
So it was neat. A lot of the training we went through, the pilots were outstanding. We had a lot of Air Force Academy grads who did their 8 years in the Air Force, went on with civilian pilots, and boy, when they came back to the military planes, it was like kids with a new bike. They wanted to play, and it was like we'd have 3-plane formations, and they go, okay, how low can you go? And we got hills and stuff above the wings, and we go, shit, we're only 200 feet off the ground.
Oh, wow.
And then when we did this, I'm going, okay, that's an 80-foot wing on that left side. We only got about 100-foot clearance. So I'm thinking, I better put my seatbelt in. So there's a lot of neat things that, these planes could do. And the pilots were so well trained. During that time period, as I mentioned the other day with you, the family really suffers.
Yeah.
People don't realize what families have to go through when we're deployed. I mean, the only thing on my mind when I'm working is, doing my job. I got to make sure I'm 100% focused on that one job, and that's flying. And where, now my wife's having to take care of the bank accounts, having to take care of the bills. And when I got activated, my wife was a full-time teacher, working on her master's, a varsity softball coach, and we had a 4-year-old.
Wow.
And all that was dumped on her plate. So, being a reservist, 60 miles from the base, you had no support system whatsoever.
No.
There's nobody to help my wife. She had family nearby that helped some. I was fortunate. I had a twin brother that lived real close. And, he'd babysit, take care of my daughter, help out as much as he could, because I know that, he wished that he was there with me doing my job. But medically, he couldn't do that. He couldn't get in because of some medical conditions. So he helped out big time at home. And, here's my little 4-year-old saying, Uncle Glenn, can I give you a nickname? He goes, sure. Can I call you Daddy? And he goes, until Dad gets home. So, he was a big plus.
Yeah.
But, I talked to other members that were in the military that got activated, police officers, stuff like that. The support the police officers got. I mean, not only did they get the double dip, meaning they got their civilian pay and military pay, but their union reached out to the family, hey, can we do anything? And there's people supporting them. My school district never, ever reached out to my family.
Wow.
My principal never reached out to my family.
Yeah.
And when I was going through this training, and maybe I had 2 weeks off and I went back to teaching, my principal sat down and said, you need to make a decision. I go, between what? Well, between playing military and teaching. So, you're shitting me. I remember 9/11 sitting in your office and you're seeing that, we're seeing the airplane hit and she's all worried about her 18-year-old son being drafted. I go, no, he's not going to be drafted. We don't have the draft. We got reserves to step up.
Yeah.
So I'm stepping up for your kid to stay home and you're treating me like this.
Yeah.
To where,
Wow.
I did not want to go back to work.
I always say it, the spouses, they don't really get the recognition I think they deserve because, they really take that big brunt of the weight, because you're military, it's military before family. Military you're the enlistee or, being activated and it's like, hey, this is what you signed up for and it's time to do this. It's,
Yeah, because, when I first joined with the Navy Reserves, we weren't at war and, I went 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. And my wife, I was married when I joined that.
Yeah.
And, okay, you go, I realize you want to do that, go do that.
Yeah.
But boy, after 9/11, where I was gone all the time, she goes, wait a minute, what happened to, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year?
Yeah.
And so it was very, very difficult on our marriage.
Yeah.
One, financially. I took a $72,000 pay cut within those 2 years of activation. And the thing is, when I first joined the military, they offered a mobilization insurance policy. And at that time, my pay was almost equal, but I thought, I better take it because I know eventually I'll make more money as a teacher. So I was paying into that every month, my military check, which is, close to half of it when I first started. And when I got activated, I called them and said, hey, I purchased your insurance policy. They go, oh, we don't have that anymore. I go, what do you mean you don't have that anymore? Well, Congress never replenished the account because they used it all up for Kosovo and Bosnia. I go, so you tell me I don't get my pay difference? No. And that's where, you used to, pretty decent lifestyle at first, we finally made money. And all of a sudden you're dropping.
Yeah.
And then, every time I had a chance to talk to my wife when I was overseas, maybe once every 3 weeks, if I'm lucky to get the phone card to call, our discussion was, hey, we're going broke. I'm having trouble making payments. You got to go to pay and find out what the hell's going on. And when I finally rotated home for a couple of days, I went to pay and said, shit, my wife's saying that we're not getting much here. Well, they realized for over a year they didn't pay my housing allowance.
Oh, wow. And they were supposed to be.
They were supposed to be. And so we got a retro check. But the stress that we went through for that entire year, trying to make ends meet.
Yeah. And you being gone and not really being able to do anything about it.
Yep.
That's got to be real, real stressful.
Yeah. And like I said, when I did get home and, the fact that, hey, I got 2 weeks at home. No, I only got 2 days. And my wife finally said, hey, don't come home.
Yeah.
Don't come home until you're done.
Right.
Because every time you're coming in, you get our hopes up that you're going to be 2 weeks. You're only here 2 days. You get our hopes up. You don't even show up. And I get home and, she's been running the show, but I had a military upbringing and I saw my daughter doing something. I said, hey, she goes, hey, you're just throwing a wrench into our machine here. We got things worked out.
Right.
So I thought, okay. So it was strange coming home. And when I finally got off my activation, got back home, we had to get through family counseling.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what was it like transitioning?
Very, very difficult.
Really?
Being gone, doing that. I used to watch a movie called Tour Duty as a kid growing up. And it was about a platoon in Vietnam, and how his sergeant kept going back after his year. He'd keep re-enlisting, because he wanted to take care of his guys. Mm-hmm. And if I wasn't married and had a family, I would have stayed as long as I could. I just felt that I needed to be doing the job I was doing. That was the Medevacs. Mm-hmm. There are options, where we could have picked other missions, but if I was going to be away from my home, my family, I'm doing Medevacs. Mm-hmm. And so when I was getting off active duty orders, my squadron goes, okay, we're going to be getting C-17s pretty soon. You need to sign up for that school. I go, wait a minute. Just getting home, you're going to send me to C-17 school? I said, I can't. So I went inactive reserves for 2 years. And during that 2 years, I worked at our marriage, tried getting back in the routine of teaching. It was very, very difficult. I realized that, when my daughter was playing sports, I couldn't sit in the stands. Any large groups, I just couldn't do it. Mm. So that's when I started getting back into photography. I just felt better being by myself, just doing my own thing, because it just felt strange being around people and you're going, these people know the cost of this war, or what's going on, the mayhem that's happening and stuff like that. Mm. And so I felt that I didn't belong with it.
You said earlier you were talking to me how you have trouble sleeping too these days, huh?
Yeah, that all started with the 141s. Our sleep cycles were so messed up. When we were flying contingency, so we flew with the augmented crew, which means 3 pilots, 2 loadmasters, which means that they could fly us 24 hours and 45 minutes before they put us to bed. Mm. So those were long ass days. Granted, we had 2 loadmasters, and one had to be awake during the time period. So I was always low man on the totem pole. So we had just got up, got to the plane, did our pre-flight, took off, and okay, go take a nap. Oh, shit, I'm not really tired. So I'd go up and try and sleep, and then he'd wake me up, and I'm not even asleep, and then just that whole cycle. Now I find myself anytime I'm not doing anything or sitting in a car, I close my eyes automatically because I'm thinking, oh, I got to get as much sleep as I can.
Yeah.
And, you know, being on alert status, phone ringing in the middle of the night, and sleeping with other crews that were being alerted. I found out that when I was not due to fly the next day or anything, I started taking, you know, over-the-counter sleeping pills because my sleep cycle was completely out of whack. And I continued that for almost 10 years, actually.
Wow.
If I wasn't flying, because, you know, you can't be taking those things while you're flying.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I was home, I was taking that just to sleep and, you know, to deal with stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, the biggest thing is that, you know, when I got married, when I met my wife, she didn't drink. And it's like, yeah, I drank some. Yeah, I like to party and stuff, but here's a woman that I love and I don't need to drink, so I quit. So I wouldn't put that pressure on her. Well, I didn't drink for almost 13 years.
Wow.
But once I started flying medevacs, you get back, you're so hyped up, everybody's drinking. You know, I started drinking.
Yeah.
You know, just to unwind and to try and get some sleep.
Right.
So I started drinking, you know, while I was over there. When I rotated home, yeah, no drinking. But to this day, I've never told her I was drinking over there.
Oh, really?
To deal with what I was dealing with.
Wow.
Yeah.
How are you and the family doing now?
Yeah, we're doing great.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, when I took that 2 years off, it was going into the third year. The marriage started coming back together, and my wife noticed something, or she figured it out, to where she came to me and she goes, I finally realized why you wanted to serve. And if you've got that need, you can go back. Because, you know, I was getting shit from my school district. I mean, when I went back to my school, the superintendent called me into his office. Hey, glad you're back. So you're back here for good? I go, no, I'm air crew. I can be gone tomorrow. Oh, you'll never get your tenure. I'll never get my tenure? Yeah. And this is how you're treating me?
Yeah.
And you didn't do pay differential? You're treating me that way? So that was very difficult. But I was looking for other school districts. And I landed a job in Newport Beach, and things were really going well. But my wife came up to me. She goes, you can go back. So I went back to my squadron. I had lost my slot. Somebody else had filled it. They go, yeah, you know, if we have an opening, we'll let you know. But Combat Camera called me. They go, hey, we noticed you took photography in high school. I said, yeah, love photography. Well, we want you to come and interview. So I went and interviewed, and Combat Camera picked me up.
Nice.
So went through combat photography school. I was in Fort Meade, Maryland. Unfortunately, about a month and a half in, my father-in-law passed away. And, you know, he got injured. I flew home, missed it by one day. He had passed away, and I was only, you know, 3 days at home comforting my wife, and then I had to go back. So I went back to school, graduated, and then went through my prog tour in Arizona, Luke Air Force Base, where my dream came true at Luke Air Force Base. I always wanted to fly in a jet fighter. Oh, that was my biggest dream. You know, hey, I'm flying in cargo planes. That's awesome. I enjoy it. But I really would like to sit in a fighter. And a colonel liked the work I did. And he goes, can you take pictures in the back seat? And I'd only been there 2.5 months.
Wow.
There were guys at Public Affairs I worked with, been there 3 years. They never got an invite.
Oh, wow.
But, you know, whenever I took pictures, I always gave them to whoever gave copies, you know. Thanks for letting me take your picture. Here they are. Use them for training, whatever. And the colonel asked me, and I got to go up with a 3-plane formation, got to go to the tanker. In the 45 minutes, the colonel goes, okay, how do you want us? Okay, when diamond formation. You know, I'm just taking pictures that you wouldn't believe.
Super cool.
And then, you know, ended up 3 hours, and we had two pilots that were training, so we went out to the dogfighting range. And that first one is like, oh my God. You know, I brought a Ziploc bag for my barf. I wasn't going to use one of those brown bags.
Yeah.
That wasn't going to catch it all. So I brought a big Ziploc, and I thought I was going to chuck. And then I remember the crew chief says, hey, when you know you're turning, push the button right here. I go, they're right there. He goes, yeah, that pre-inflates your G suit. So, we banked, and there's a slight lag.
Yeah.
And, I'm ready to barf. Then I remember, oh, yeah, that button. And, these planes are flying all over. I don't see them at all. So I'm looking at the radar. And every time I saw the blimps go by, I start pushing that puppy. My head felt like a pimple when we turned, but, it kept me from barfing.
What kind of planes were they?
F-16.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was just fantastic. And then landed, and I had a half hour to get over to my next photo shoot, and that was Senator McCain.
Oh,
Senator McCain came to the base for a briefing, and I was assigned to take his picture. So, I just had a great experience at combat camp. Brought back the love of photography I have.
Yeah.
And I was ready to deploy to Afghanistan. I was on the slot, ready to go in a couple months. And then I get a call from a unit, and they said, hey, want to go back to flying? Shit, photography, flying. And I go, well, I can do my photography stuff on the outside. I'm going back to flying. So I went back to flying and got a 17 slot, got trained, and then we started doing medevacs out of Afghanistan. And what was interesting, during the time period with also the 141 and the 17, I started thinking about these young kids, 18, 19, 20-year-olds that are stationed there full time in the combat zone. And, I just started asking, hey, what do you guys need? DVDs, books, this, that. And I'd reach out to the school I got hired at. It was a CDM high school. And I sent an email to, parents and stuff. I said, hey, would you like to donate to troops? And if you want to donate, put everything in a box, copy paper, perfect box, went right underneath the red seats. So if you're going to do something, just put it in those boxes, have them, designated area in the office, and I'll pick them up whenever, I'm rotating home and I can get back to the bed. And so I'd have like 50 boxes.
Wow.
Of all this stuff that I'd take, to Afghanistan and stuff.
Yeah.
And, I remember I talked to the Rotary Club, and they donated 50 soccer balls and pumps. So I took those and gave them to the people on the ground. Just really starting to get to know, some of the ground personnel. And then something came out saying, okay, you can't take care packages anymore. Because when you think about it, we don't know what's in each box. So I started asking them for their addresses. Hey, where can we mail stuff to you? So they give us the address, email that address back home. And by the time I got back to Afghanistan, everybody, hey, we got boxes from your school. That was the best boxes we ever received.
Nice.
Because, I remember when I was in 141 and I was in Germany, and it was during Christmas, and somebody gave us a care package. It was filled with cookies. And it was an elementary school from South Carolina. And, hey, thanks for doing what you're doing. And I started corresponding with them.
Yeah, nice.
And,
those care packages are cool.
Yeah.
I remember getting a big Easter one out there in Iraq during the invasion. A big old box. Everybody thought it was mail. Like, oh, we're getting our mail, but it was just one big care package, and it had like a bunch of chocolate and candy.
It's amazing how your morale goes up. Hey, somebody remembers.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to help these troops out down there. Now, I remember meeting this, he was a warrant officer, and we're talking, and I said, yeah, I work at a high school, Cron Del Mar in Newport Beach. He goes, shit, I graduated from there. Is Jelnick still there? I go, what? He goes, yeah, I graduated from CDM. Oh, wow. I said, yeah, Coach Jelnick's still there. Wow. So it was just a small world.
Yeah.
And so, I'd get their addresses and share, and, it was adopt a troop, send this, send that. And my school really came through.
Nice.
But I want to back up. It was something I did for my daughter because, like I said, I was gone a lot. I took one of her teddy bears and I put a backpack on it, and I put some disposable cameras. I put a flight log in it. I put a little badge on it with my daughter's picture in the back. It said, hi, my name's Casey. My dad's in the Air Force. This is my teddy bear. Please take him around the world. So I took him to Iraq, met a couple nurses, gave it to them. Said, send him back in a year. Well, a year later, I get a call from Tennessee up at March. Hey, you got to come pick up your bear. I go, what? Yeah, your bear's sitting here. I show up, it's got a Hawaiian shirt on, polka shells. It's got an ID made for access to anywhere in Afghanistan and Iraq. He's got a hat made up with the KC written across it. I developed the pictures, and you got the bear flying the airplane, partying up with crew.
Oh, wow.
And all the Kakistans he's been. And that was something I wanted to do for my daughter.
Yeah.
And I brought her home, and she started I go, no, you don't take stuff off.
Yeah.
So I had to box it up, but now she's becoming a history teacher, so I can't wait to take that back out and give that to her and say, hey,
oh, that's awesome.
She remembers a little bit of it, but I didn't want her to be playing with it.
Yeah.
So
wow, super cool.
And then I'd taken flags with me, had them signed, and I gave one to my new school district. Thank you for your support. Iraqi freedom, and stuff like that.
Yeah, nice.
So I went to C-17 school, and then flew Medevacs there.
Wow.
And then a lot of medical issues, occurred. I'd hurt my back in the beginning, and it's gotten worse, and some other injuries where I had to basically be medically retired from the reserves after 26 and a half years.
Yeah.
And I miss it every day. I miss the people I worked with and all that. And yesterday I get a text from TJ. As a lieutenant colonel pilot I flew with who lives in Huntington Beach. He reached out to me. He goes, hey, you're still in Huntington? So I'm giving him a call today.
Oh, nice.
I hadn't talked to him in about 4 years.
Wow.
And,
that's super cool.
The connections you make and the people.
Yeah. Good. Right on. Well, we're going to get ready to wrap it up.
Okay.
It's already been an hour.
Has it really? Oh, my gosh.
Told you it flies by.
Yeah,
right?
it does.
You guys are like, oh, you record for that long? I'm like, I'll watch when you sit down. It just flies right by. So, any last words before we cut the tape?
Just want to tell you about what my high school was doing. Corona Del Mar was there several years ago. Is that they did a project with the history and the English department, and they're basically doing what you're doing. And what they would do is living history, and they were given vets to interview, and we had vets from World War II, Korea. Remember the movie We Were Soldiers? Mm-hmm. The gentleman that actually fought in that battle, our kids got to interview.
Oh.
We had a World War II Medal of Honor winner from D-Day that was being interviewed by these students, and it brought history to life.
Yeah.
And that's why, when you told me what you were doing, I'm 100% on board. This needs to be recorded. I mean, we found out at our post, American Legion post that, 5 of our World War II veterans died, last month. That's history that is lost. The military documents everything.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, nothing's being documented of the personnel afterwards. Trying to get everybody's story, and that's what about what you're doing.
Awesome, Gary. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you for doing this. I know that this is all volunteer for you. And you're not getting a cent for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Hopefully you get some support there.
Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared. Hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe on my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me your way cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they feeling the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares.